I call the meeting to order. Please rise to the pledge to the flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Anytime.
It's always nice to be had, right?
All right, I see everybody signed the sign-in sheet, which would suffice for the roll call, except for JJ, who said he wasn't going to be here. Did you sign? All right, approval of minutes from March 25th. Everybody should have received them through email. Everybody had a chance to read the textbook here.
No.
I have to thank Terry because these minutes are voluminous, very detailed. Yes, Paul?
Thank you for the copy.
If we can, Madam Chairman, to give us time to really read these before we approve them, can we hold this over till the next meeting? and approve them
Absolutely.
then?
So is there a motion to table accepting the minutes?
I make a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll make the motion. Oh, who's second?
No.
Bill.
No, I could get off.
Is there any?
You sure?
Bill seconded. Bill was.
Because I meant to make a copy.
Again.
Is there any further discussion on tabling this? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Oh, no, these are the minutes.
Introduction of speakers. We have with us Lauren Green, the Chief Information Officer. At our last commission meeting, it was brought up, if there is a possibility to Skype members in that can't be here,
That is possible.
that is possible.
We do have, I have a county-based Skype account that we can utilize. I would just need to have staff here to monitor and manage and make sure everything stays up and running while you guys are doing it.
Is everybody hearing this, that it is
Mhm.
possible?
Mhm.
Is it possible only in this room, or it could be in the
It is
legislature?
possible only in this room right now. We could make it possible elsewhere if necessary, but it is set to be in this room.
We normally meet in the legislative hearing room, but
Okay.
there's a meeting there today, correct? Is that why?
Yeah, there's nobody in there right now.
Next month is gonna be in.
Is this gonna bust your budget? Skyping with extra people?
No, it doesn't bust my budget. I do have to, either I do it myself or I'll have to pay somebody to be here, yes. It's not a budget buster, but.
But it's an impact on your budget, in some way.
Not significant enough for me to be concerned.
Oh.
It's not gonna, I'm assuming it's not going to be every single month.
No, no,
It's only on those rare occasions when it's a meeting.
right.
I would just request at least a week's notice, just so that I can make the arrangements. I'm assuming you're gonna know on a monthly basis, like I already know that there's a situation for next month.
Next month I will not be here. And we knew that JJ wasn't going to be here this month.
Right.
But when I spoke to him earlier, he wasn't able to even call
Not
in.
even by conference, okay.
Right.
So you wanna have the ability to do the Skype call next month?
If at all possible.
Absolutely. Is there gonna be any opportunity for us to be able to test the connection and make sure that we've got communication prior to the meeting, so that we're not embarrassed when it's time to turn it on?
We can do it from some other facility. I could try
Can
from
we
home.
talk- Can we talk at some point offline
Sure.
and just make those arrangements?
Sure,
Okay.
absolutely.
Terry, you'll-
Does anybody else have any questions or concerns or?
Well, you need the date of the next meeting, right?
it's May.
20th.
May 20th.
Oh, that's right.
Nadia, I noticed in the prior minutes from the previous committee, it was 3 consecutive meetings, not necessarily 3 meetings. So, if
Oh, I didn't know.
that's,
It is
It's
3
in,
consecutive.
yeah, it's in the,
So-
one of the
so it might not be an issue on whether or not you've even Skype in.
I think it's more for information. Again, I don't necessarily have to Skype in. I can listen to the tape as long as everybody speaks clearly and not over one another, so that you can decipher what's on that tape.
Right, and the minutes are so clean
Right.
and so voluminous, as you said,
Right.
on
So
point.
we'll just think about that, but as long as the
It is-
possibility is there.
It's possible, I would just like the opportunity to test it out. just to make sure
Okay.
we're-
Where are you gonna be?
In hell, so. In no man's land, in Europe.
Right. What was your name?
Yeah, okay. Yes, there is. There is.
Yeah, are you ready?
Yes.
I know, I'm sorry.
Will you be able to vote?
According to Robert Freeman, who is Yes, we have a resolution that is, has been offered, it's on the table, but we need to do that first, but according to Robert Freeman, who is the guru of, open meetings law, yes. But we need to have a policy, which is this, but we're gonna take care of that business after.
I just wanted to
Yes,
add that if it's only in this room, the Skype, and there could be conference call then. And we should do either or.
It could be conferenced, or, and JJ, I think, was amenable to
Conference.
conference, but
Right.
something happened and he.
Okay, but I'm just saying, so that doesn't restrict us from being in this room, because someone could conference on a cell phone meeting.
Yeah,
We have a conference room that's set up here that we could move into the big room as well.
Oh, great.
You could.
Okay.
Yeah, conference capability in either location at a minimum is possible wherever you decide to meet, as long as it's within this building.
So then,
Oh, okay.
then I don't.
So it
think-
doesn't necessarily have to
Yeah,
just be
I mean,
Skype.
and if
it
it's
could
three
just-
consecutive.
Absolutely.
I
Oh,
would-
okay, we weren't aware of that.
What do we,
Yes,
yeah,
either
yeah,
or,
what do
I
we?
mean,
I'm not on the commission, and I'm not trying to tell you what to do or what not to do, but I would just advise caution if you're going to have a conference call, because you don't know who is sitting there.
But they're public meetings.
I understand that, but I've run into that in contract negotiations as a union representative, where we conference called and we found out that the other side was sitting with their lawyers, which they weren't supposed to be doing. Just a word of caution, that's all. If you feel comfortable with a conference call, that's fine.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? Yes, Paul.
We had talked in the last couple of meetings about at some point starting to post our agenda in advance, because we wouldn't always be meeting here, just so people will be aware of what we're doing, and also maybe posting the minutes. I don't know
It
if
is
Terry,
already,
if you.
it's already there.
Okay, we have that.
If you go to the county website, on the upper right-hand side, there's a department's drop-down list. The Charter Revision Commission is listed there. Meeting schedule is there, minutes are there. When we get the agenda, we post, so we did get it today.
Oh, good.
If
So-
you want it sooner, as
We're
soon
all
as we
set
get
then.
it, we'll put it there. You're all set there.
Great.
Great, thanks, Lauren.
Okay?
Thank you very much. Thank
Anything
you.
else?
No, that's it. You're very
Excellent.
helpful.
Thank you very much,
much.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now that that has been settled, we know we have the capability. Larry was so kind enough, he reads my mind all the time, came up with a resolution for allowing us, if we so choose to vote that way, to have long-distance electronic participation. So I'm gonna read the resolution. Sullivan County Commission Resolution dated today, which is 4/15/15. This would be resolution number 1, wouldn't it? Since we don't have any? Okay, resolution number 1.
Well, we adopted Robert's rules. That would have been resolution.
So this is resolution number 2. So Sullivan County Charter Commission Resolution number 2 of April 15th, 2015. Whereas the duly appointed members of the Sullivan County Charter Review Commission has voted to operate under the provisions of Robert's Rules, and whereas Robert's Rules does not provide for long-distance electronic participation at scheduled meetings, and whereas from time to time, a duly appointed commission member may be out of the area at the time of a scheduled meeting, but wishes to participate and has the electronic capability available to do so, and whereas it is very important that members progress through the review procedure background presentations available to all, now therefore be it resolved that long-distance participation by a duly appointed commission member via electronic means, when verified, shall count as being in attendance, and such participation shall have all the privileges of an attending member. Do I have a motion on this resolution?
Make a motion.
Is there a second for discussion?
Second.
Discussion. Any changes? Everybody okay with the wording? Thank you, Larry, that was very good.
Will that wording be sent to us?
We can have a copy, yeah, we can,
Electronic?
Part of it.
sure, of course. What would you do if I said no? All right, so we have a motion and a second. No further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions? Objections? Unanimous. Thank you. Okay. And we have the pleasure of having with us today our county attorney, Sam. Sam, where'd you go? He's in here. Hi, Sam. How are you?
We won't answer that one.
Okay, sorry, I take that back. Thank you for coming. do you want to start off by giving us some insight on the charter, your opinion?
I have to do that.
Actually, I'd like to start off by asking the members of the commission some questions. This is my second period of service as a county attorney. I served 10 years in Westchester County, which is a very different county. As a county executive, an elected county executive, the government is much different in Westchester than it is here. I told Nadia today that it's the only county of the 62 in the state of New York that doesn't tax.
Why don't we bring a chair over, Sam?
Westchester does not tax. Most people find that a little bit odd. In the other counties of the state, the counties make the towns whole. In Westchester, the towns make the county whole, which is a reversal of what Stoneleaf lays out. That charter is probably the oldest charter in the state. It goes back to the 1920s. It's the only county charter I know of that was enacted by the state legislature rather than a county board, whether a board of supervisors or a board of legislators. And it has not been amended very often. What is a charter? What's a county charter? Anyone?
Local law.
Anyone?
Sets
The
the
framework
groundwork.
for how the county
Framework
is
for
governed.
how the
Right, sets the
government
groundwork.
operates, a constitution.
It,
And we don't have to adopt the
that's
charter,
the-
either
that's
have
the
one or
right-
not one.
That's the correct word. The word
Constitution,
constitution
right.
is the correct word. It is our equivalent of the federal constitution or the state constitution. Well, I wouldn't call it the equivalent of the state constitution. The state constitution is a real mess. But it is the equivalent of the of the federal constitution. And if you go back, the federal constitution, when it was adopted, representations were made that the Bill of Rights would be enacted, so that everybody who voted for it knew that they were voting for a constitution and a Bill of Rights. How many amendments that was going to be was not clear. The original proposal was for 12, it ultimately became 10. If you subtract those 10, which are really part of the original Constitution, and you subtract the 2 amendments which cancel one another out, prohibition and repeal of prohibition, you wind up with 15 amendments that are viable today. 15 amendments in a Constitution that has lasted over 200 years. This charter has many more amendments than that, and a structure document that's only, what, 20 years old or so?
25.
So we get amendment happy, I guess, on the county level. My second question is, what is county government? What does the county do? Why does the county exist? Should it exist? What's its purpose? Why do we have a county government?
Extension of the state.
Pardon?
It's an extension of the state.
Well, it is an extension of the state, but for example, if you go across the border into Connecticut, you will not find any county government. We don't have county government in Connecticut. What we call our Division of Social Services here in Liberty doesn't exist in Connecticut. It's a regional office of state government. Somewhat similar in Pennsylvania. There's nothing that mandates we have a county government. And if you think about it, we have a lot of layers of government in this state. And whether you call them government or taxing entities or regulatory entities, think about all of the governmental type entities that exist. Name a few.
County, town, village, special district, fire, all tax levying
Why do you
entities.
say special district? You've got fire districts, you've got library districts,
Services.
you've got water districts, you've got sewer districts, you've got lighting districts, you've got all sorts of things that we come up with as a way of imposing taxes.
We have a red zone district?
Las Vegas.
Pardon?
Red zone district.
Over the years. There's always been suggestion that we do mergers. You'll excuse this cockamamie hand that I'm working with right now. It doesn't work very well. Should some of the towns be merged into the county? Should some of the towns be merged with one another? Should towns and villages be merged? Because we have an awful lot of governmental entities. Well, that's slightly beyond the scope of this commission. But if you look at it, you will understand that you can't revise a charter until you first understand why the county exists and what its purpose is. And what it's supposed to do. For example, in this building, we have a Department of Public Works, takes care of roads, bridges, county facilities, county buildings. I said bridges very quickly because everybody assumes there are roads and bridges. You will be surprised to know, or at least some of you will be surprised to know, that when the former Board of Supervisors ran the county, they took most of the bridges and culverts, anything 20 feet in length and longer, and turned them over to the county. Well, it makes a great deal of, pardon?
I said shame on him, and he said it was done before he got there.
It makes a great.
It wasn't him, it was the town of Fallsburg that spearheaded that, just so you know.
It makes a great deal of sense if you're running for town supervisor. Those town supervisors run on town budgets. They don't really run on the county budget, which they also oversee. One of the more expensive things in a town is a bridge. Bridges are very expensive things to maintain. So if you take the bridge and you get the state to pass a little law that says anything 20 feet in length and over, is it 20 or 22, Gene? I think it's 20.
It's 20.
Becomes a county responsibility. Whoopee! Town supervisors no longer have the burden and the responsibility and the cost and the expense of maintaining all those bridges and culverts on town roads. So you drive down a town road now, and you get to a bridge, and you think because you're on a town road, you're on a town bridge. You're not. You're on a county bridge. And now there's an automobile accident, which happens just either on that bridge or slightly off it or just before it or just after it, and the county gets sued. Because it was a county bridge, and did the county properly maintain the bridge, and did the maintenance of the bridge cause that accident. That adds a great deal to the county's budget and to the budget of the Department of Public Works. Because all those bridges are expensive to maintain. Yeah, Paul.
I want to make the point that I haven't made the presentation yet, but what Sam is telling you, I also would have addressed, and that's just one of the reasons why we changed from the Board of Supervisors to a county legislature, exactly what he's talking.
But
Which is what? Could you clarify that?
Yes,
That-
what the town supervisors did in transferring all of these bridges from their budget to the county budget for maintenance.
But it's still coming out of the taxpayer.
it's the same
Wow.
taxpayer.
Different
Is it
government.
coming out of the
Different
town?
government.
Different portions
No.
coming out of the
No.
county.
But it's still coming out of their
the
pocket.
county.
Now it comes out of the
Okay.
county
Okay.
budget.
But it also goes back to the previous point Sam made about Westchester County. It's the only county where towns make the county whole. In our county, the county has to make the towns whole. So
Yes.
people,
Yes, they are
So
unique. in
come
that.
January, if you don't collect in your town all of the town taxes, County of Sullivan has to write out a check to make you whole.
Except the villages, the county does not make
No,
whole.
I said the town.
Right.
So, here we are with added burdens in terms of bridges and culverts that aren't ours, and the responsibility to make a level of government whole that should be making itself whole, if you will. Most people don't understand that. Most of you, I'm sure,
And we're in a hole $30 million for 2015 taxes, by the way.
and we make school districts whole as
and
well.
we make school districts whole as well. So here you sit in a meeting room for a government which makes those other levels of government whole. They don't have to worry about collecting all their taxes. We collect it for them, and if we can't collect it, then we wind up with tax foreclosures and everything that goes along with that.
Sam, didn't it make for some efficiencies that the county would chase after the non-taxpayers rather than the individual towns would have to have their own personnel to do it? Didn't it make for any kind of efficiency?
You can argue that,
It definitely makes sense. I can tell you for foreclosure, you can't have 15 towns doing foreclosure.
And I don't think the snowplow that was plowing the town road stopped at the bridge and waited for the county plow to do the bridge.
He didn't, he waited for the town plow, ironically.
Town plow.
Town plows a lot of the county roads by contract. But I'll go back, during those years when I was county attorney in Westchester, every town supervisor used to campaign against that provision of the Westchester County Charter. They said it made no sense.
Sam.
But privately, let me finish, they loved it. I'll tell you why they loved it. Two reasons. First is that there was a county attorney back then with a beard who wrote an opinion that said they can collect the taxes all year long, but they only have to turn it over to the county at 2 points in time, one in the spring and one in the fall.
Yeah.
And they can keep it in an interest-bearing savings account until they turn it over to the county. And if they wind up with more money in that savings account than the bill, they can keep the difference. I did sign my name on that opinion way back when, and they were all very happy about that. So most of them in decent years, decent economic years, make out. The other reason they make out is that Westchester, unlike almost any other county in the state, has a AAA tax rate. And those towns all buy their major pieces of equipment and things of that sort on the county's credit. so they do very well. Yeah, they always argue that it makes no sense, they shouldn't be doing it, but in reality, they love it. You can, doesn't mean that's the right way to do it, you can do it a whole bunch of different ways. But I come back to you again and say, why do we have a county government? What functions does the county government provide to you? Name a couple of the functions that we have.
When Dr. Benjamin spoke to us at our last meeting, he suggested that to a considerable extent, the county serves for the state. It's an agent for the state to carry out state functions.
No, it doesn't. It really doesn't.
Sam, I just ask you a question?
Go ahead.
Before we go on. When you're talking about Westchester, you're talking about one of the counties in the state of New York that has the highest tax revenue. They have the highest, they have high employment rate.
Yep.
They have the least poverty,
Yep.
except for Yonkers. And you're talking about all they contribute economically with all the corporations that are in Westchester.
Absolutely.
So you look at Sullivan County and you look at the towns that we have here, you're comparing apples and oranges. We have no corporations, we have no poverty, we have an IDA that's giving away abatements for low-paying jobs.
I wasn't advocating, I was merely pointing out that there are differences among the counties in the state, that's all.
Now the villages, I just wanted to ask you a question. We have
I
5
don't-
villages in Sullivan County.
I don't want to get into arguments.
No, I'm not arguing. The 5 villages in Sullivan County are not made whole. And if you look at Liberty, they're complaining about that. You look at Monticello, when Ray was there, he worked out something with the auctions. You look at Jeffersonville, Wurtsboro, you
Right.
go to Woodridge. You know, you have all these villages. Why not make them whole as well?
You could. Change state law and you could do it. I'm not trying to start arguments. I just want to point out that there are a lot of differences among the counties in the state.
To clarify.
And to say that we serve as the state's agent is kind of facetious because if we did serve as the state's agent, I'd expect a check from the state at the end of the year or at the beginning of the year or sometime during the year, which we don't get.
I may misquote him slightly. He said, county government is created for the convenience of the state to deliver services. A county is both a state agent and an autonomous unit. That was his description.
It's not really an autonomous unit.
Yeah.
It isn't. It's a municipal corporation. It exists by virtue of being a branch of the state. It's a governmental entity. This government has a budget of approximately $200 million a year. And for that $200 million, what services do we provide? Come on, anybody?
Snow removal, social services is the
Social
biggest.
services,
I go through the sheriff's
All
department.
right, take them one at a time if you
It's
will.
going to be fun to transcribe.
You said, somebody said, social services. And I pointed out to you that if you go across the border into Connecticut, that's a state function.
Right.
It's not a county function.
State
And
mandates.
here, it really isn't a county function. Because all of the rules and regs as to how the Department of Social Services runs is dictated by the state and federal government. So there's no real independence in terms of how you run that department. There are all sorts of rules and regs from the state, and when we get it wrong, the state comes down on us. And yes, we get either 2/3 or 3/4 or some other percentage reimbursement if we do it right. But we save the state the burden of doing it, and we save the state the expense between the 3/4 and the 2/3 or whatever it is, and 100%. We are one of only 2 states
Yes, us in North Carolina, I believe.
Yes.
in the nation in which the county picks up Medicaid.
$369,000 a week we pay.
One of
much?
only-
How much?
$369,000 a week.
And
one of
rising.
only
Could you
two-
say that again, Nancy?
$369,000 a week I do a wire for.
A week.
A week.
A
week.
week.
One of only,
And what is the final number on a year?
It's about 22 million.
22 million.
Yeah.
one of only two states in the nation.
Now, are they changing part of that?
They
They
did,
claim they are.
What did they-
capped it so that we're not, it used to be you never knew what you were
What the
gonna
cap
be
was.
paying every year. And then they capped it at like a 3%, 2%. It went down a little bit for 2 payments this year and now it went back. It
So, you know,
Wow.
That's a yearly bill we count on. It's a $20 million a year bill.
Exactly.
that
And
we
how
have
mu-
to
how
pay.
much of the
Can't do without
budget,
it.
how much of the budget is that?
Well, I could.
What's the
Well,
percentage?
10%.
10%.
Guys,
Well,
one
you
at a
remember
time.
when they
How
do
much?
that pie?
8%.
You see that
9%.
pie they do
No,
now
it's
and
more
they
than
break it
8% of
off
our
so that
budget.
you see what part of your tax bill you're paying.
Right,
for
right,
Medicaid.
but what percentage, you don't know the exact?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, we have a $200 million budget, this is 22 million, so it's,
It's about 10%.
do the math, it's
Our
less than
tax base
10%.
raises around $49 million.
so what other quote-unquote services do we provide?
Public safety.
Sheriff's Department, jail, district attorney,
Road patrol.
Well, that's part of the
Probably.
sheriff's, yeah.
Probation.
all of probation, all of public safety.
Right.
Uh,
Personnel, we do personnel.
The sheriff's department, the sheriff is
Social
the
security.
chief elected law enforcement officer in the county. He is a constitutional officer. The only person who can remove the sheriff is the governor. So the sheriff is a.
The voter, or the voter.
Well, that's every 4 years.
That's an election, you know, any elected official can always be removed by
That's right, the
elected.
coroner can. That's right, it's true. Yeah.
True. I can arrest
Yeah.
him.
Yeah,
But
that's right.
it's the only, it's one of the few elected offices which can only be removed by the governor. Again, Westchester is unique. When I was there, we abolished the sheriff. I shot the sheriff. We did, we abolished it.
How many counties, Sam, don't have a sheriff?
Only Westchester.
Only Westchester.
But they have a county police.
Actually, New York City doesn't
New York.
have a sheriff, they have a civil
Division.
sheriff, because in New York City, the 5 counties which make up the city of New York, or the boroughs of the city of New York, really don't have county government with the exception of the district attorney and the county clerk. So in those 5 counties, those are the only 2 elected officials that you will see in New York City. Come back, what other services do we provide?
Garbage removal.
No, we don't.
No, civil
We don't
service.
remove-
We do civil service even for the schools.
No, that's not,
And
we don't
SUNY.
provide that as a service.
SUNY.
We don't
Like Sullivan
provide-
County Community
We
College.
don't provide, wait a minute.
We fund it,
We don't provide
No, but we
garbage
fund it.
removal in this county.
It's got a budget.
We used to provide a landfill. We presently provide a remote dumping site to which, and we have a transfer station here in Monticello, to which private haulers or municipal haulers can bring solid waste. We don't provide garbage removal. Some counties do.
Nor are we mandated to.
Nor are we mandated
It's
to.
actually a town responsibility.
Some counties provide sewer and water services. If you go down along the Hudson River and you look at, if you're on the New Jersey side of the Hudson River,
I feel sorry for you.
yes, just above Yonkers, you'll see a massive sewage treatment plant. I think it's the second or third largest sewage treatment plant in the state of New York. That's a county-owned plant. Sullivan County doesn't have any county-owned solid waste plants, or sewage plants, or water plants. We have a planning department. What's a planning department do? Anybody?
Good question.
Grants,
339 evaluation.
Right, it does review.
It does
239.
something called a 339 review, which is a state mandated review of certain development projects that are gonna be on county roads or, appear with county roads. And it is mandated by state law to do that review. Beyond that, the planning department is pretty much on its own as to what it's going to do. It gets involved in grantsmanship, it gets involved in assisting local municipalities to the extent that the planning department, the county legislature, and the local municipalities want it to. Most people don't know what a planning department does, if you think about it.
Public Works.
Public Works, I said before, somebody said snow removal. Well, the irony about snow removal is a lot of town snow plows plow county roads by contract. Back and forth, we do this every fall, we get into contracts with the towns as to which towns are gonna plow which portions of county roads. And there's a payment schedule that goes back and forth for that. If you go up to Liberty, there are a lot of departments which provide services to the general public in Liberty. They have an adult care facility, a nursing home, a community mental health program, public health program, a social services program. There are a lot of those facilities up in Liberty. In this county, we do something that I've never quite understood. I'm sorry, I just don't understand it. We have what we call a division of health and family services. In most jurisdictions, a department is larger than a division. A division is a smaller unit within a department. In Sullivan County, the department is the smaller unit within a division, which makes no sense. And we have this division of health and family services, which includes public health, community mental health, the nursing home, social services, and all the rest of those things. So, do we need all of them? That's gonna be up to you in a sense. If you look at this county charter, you'll see something very interesting. It's actually quite small. There's not much in it. The only entities or agencies or departments, call it what you will, that it refers to is the Board of Legislators, County Manager, County Clerk, my office,
County Treasurer.
and the County Treasurer. It doesn't refer to any of those other departments that I've just referenced, interestingly. All of those other departments you will find in the county administrative code. You won't find in the charter. Does that make sense? I don't know. That's gonna be up to you to decide. Is it logical to put them in the code as opposed to the charter? I don't know. That's something that you people are gonna have to think about and decide. Which then gives you a totally, I think, different reference for being a member of this commission than you may have had 40 minutes ago.
One other very important thing in the charter is the legislature and the reference to one man, one vote and the setup for each one of the 9 legislative districts which are specifically spelled out in the charter.
Yeah, well, that was a way of getting away from what was going on in the Board of Supervisors.
With the weighted vote.
Weighted voting. Remember, when you had a Board of Supervisors, the supervisor from Thompson carried more weight than anybody else. Because he had more people in his staff. So to get away from weighted voting, they went to this Board of Legislators form of government. I'm going to suggest to you there are a couple of questions you should now ask. Question number 1. Does it make any sense to have a legislature which all run at the same time?
So you're talking about staggered terms.
I'm talking about staggered terms.
The
We've
difficulty is the
discussed that. I think we
implementation of
agree.
Now, question number 2 would be, if you agree that there should be staggered terms, how do you get there?
Right.
Question number 1 is easy.
I think.
Most people would agree you should have
And
staggered
it's,
terms.
there's no discussion, there's only one way to do it, put the districts in a hat and draw them out.
Now, there's 100 ways
Yeah,
of
but
doing it.
there's nothing that's not gonna reek of unfairness.
What are some
other
of the
than just a
ways?
random.
I've sat and written about it.
Like,
bunch
what's
of
5,
different
10 ways?
Yeah.
Not 100.
You can sit and do it, but no matter how you do it, at least those 2 gentlemen over there are either gonna come out on the good side or the bad side of that.
Regardless, it's not by person, it's by district number.
That's right.
My idea would be, you take the 9 districts,
Mhm.
you
And
throw
divide
9
it up.
numbers into a hat.
Yeah, well, that's what,
It's the only
Get
way to do it.
an
You're not
impartial
gonna have
person
controversy.
to come out and pull the numbers. The first 3 serve a 2-year term. The
Well, I-
second 3 serve a 3-year term. The
Yeah.
last 3 serve the 4-year term. Once you do that, it
Yeah.
runs itself
Yeah,
from,
I agree.
in
Or-
It's
perpetuity.
really very simple.
Or, Gene, you go.
If my number comes up as a 2, that's
Yeah.
the luck of the draw. It is what it is.
Or you come up with, that once they get into sequence, everybody is serving a 3-year term. So the election is once every 3 years. And you can do it a bunch of different ways.
yeah, I see what you're saying.
You can
Yeah,
do, there's
yeah.
another way to
But
do it.
Yolanda Vega could come and pick it
Yeah.
up.
Only if you Harold
Well,
Diamond.
add a large side, how.
Only if you Harold Diamond.
Sam,
Another way
you
to
question
do
the
it.
number of legislators there are there too many, are there too few?
I don't know if there are too many or too few. Every county I've ever seen, every few years, they say there are too many or there are too few.
We're actually one of the smallest legislatures in the state.
I would think so.
We are.
But let me ask you a question. If we look into something like a county executive,
That's,
And you're looking at the-
That was gonna be my next
Oh.
point, and that is, I say there are 3 questions you really ought to ask. Question number 1, should you have staggered terms? Question number 2, if so, how do you get there? And you're not gonna get agreement. You're certainly not gonna get agreement on the Board of Legislators, depending on who winds up with
The short end of the stick.
Look,
the short end.
we're getting the casino, it's the luck of the draw.
Exactly.
You know, everything's a gamble in life.
Exactly. Question number 3, should this county have a county executive form of government as opposed to a county legislature with a hired county manager form of government? Those 2 different forms of government are very different. And I mean extremely different. When I served in Westchester, the first county executive I served under was a man by the name of Alfred B. Del Bello. He later became lieutenant governor. He loved running the government, loved it, and it showed. Very good at it. He did not like campaigning. He did not like all of the follow-on. He loved running the government, and he loved doing something else, which was very unique. About every 2 years, he would take all of his commissioners and take them away for 2 or 3 days, usually to the hotel there. And when we came back, we knew where Westchester government was going to be 5 years from now. We knew. We knew what we were going to do. We knew what was going to happen if we ran into obstacles. We knew what the hurdles were and how we were going to surmount them. That's very unusual. Now, Mr. Del Bello, and he said this publicly, and I used to laugh with him about this because I made a couple of trips to Washington with him. Al Del Bello always said that a legislative body will never make a difficult decision if there is any other alternative. Period. So he viewed his job as creating the crisis which forced the legislative body to make difficult decisions. Because, and look at it on a state level, look at it on a federal level, it's true. Legislative bodies tend to study, to restudy, to review.
Don't look at me when you're saying that.
I can't see Alan, that's why I would.
Am I blocking you, Alan?
But it's true.
You can overstudy.
You can, and you absolutely can overstudy. And he knew that. So I'll give you one example, and it's my favorite example. If you come into my office, you'll see 3 very large blue volumes. They're about that thick. They're the volumes that we use for putting out the bonds.
Fire?
Pardon?
No, I'm just kidding.
They're the volumes that we use for putting out the bonds for the Westchester garbage plant. About $200 million. And we got there in a very unusual way. He came to office believing, because you said the county takes care of garbage. In Westchester, it didn't do anything with garbage, but he felt it should. That was his own personal view. And he had a plan for building a solid waste treatment facility that would turn garbage into gold, garbage into electricity. When we started that, people in the towns didn't like it because they all had, well, they had their own little incinerators. They didn't want the county to take that over. And after about 1.5 years or 2 years, it became clear we weren't going to be able to do that. And we especially weren't going to be able to do it because the piece of land he picked out very foolishly, it's one of the few foolish things I've ever seen him do, was in the majority leader's district. You don't try to put garbage plants on the majority leader's district. Majority leader was a Republican, Al was a Democrat. So he backed away from it. And you would think, if you look back at the history of Westchester during those years, that he simply abandoned it. He didn't. Remember I told you we knew what we were going to do 5 years from now? We knew what we were going to do 5 years from now. We didn't abandon it. We just came up with a totally different way of going about it. And so we acquired a piece of property on the Hudson River that had been owned by Fleischmann's Yeast. It's one point, if you will, north of Indian Point. That was an interesting negotiation to buy it. And that was not on the majority leaders, in the majority leaders district. Made it very acceptable. And that plant became a very unique plant. It has 3 boilers. It supposedly was going to generate, and somebody will have to correct me if I'm wrong with any of these figures, it was supposed to generate about 2,200 degrees Fahrenheit of heat over the grates when we put the garbage into the incinerators. And because we were dealing with some very inventive people up in New Hampshire, it wound up generating 2,700 degrees of heat. An extra 500 degrees of heat is a lot of heat. And so instead of producing 45 megawatts, which was the design capacity of the plant, they ordered the next largest generator that General Electric manufactured, which was a 70 megawatt generator. And the plant produces 74 megawatts. It actually produces over the rated capacity of the generator. Pardon?
Overcapacity.
Over capacity. And it's been doing that nonstop.
I'm not on the commission, I can't answer.
It's been doing that nonstop since 1984. And one of the things that, remember I told you he had ideas for how to get things done? We go into the city of Peekskill with that plant. And if you go over the Bear Mountain Bridge and you come down, you will see that plant. It's a big beige building just north of Indian Point. I take a lot of pride in that building. A lot of work went into that. That all came together 8 years after people told us you can't do this. But one of the reasons we could do it is if you are a resident of the city of Peekskill and you get your electric bill, you get a rebate every month. You get a rebate for the existence of the Westchester garbage plant being in your city. So now you look at your electric bill and you say, hey, that's great. I'm getting money back because that garbage plant is in my town or in my city. People are happy to have it there. Call it bribe, I don't know what you want to call it, but it works well, and the people are happy, and it generates enough electricity to pay for, well, it's probably more than half the electricity of the county. Because somebody had the forethought when people were objecting to the garbage plant. Somebody had the forethought of saying, is there another way of getting this done? Instead of sitting at committee meetings and getting involved in debates, short-term debates, and nobody's thinking 5 years down the road. So what I'm suggesting to you is there is a way of running a government that's very efficient, very effective, if you know what you want to do, how you want to get there. I will suggest to you that most governmental entities do not run that way. They just don't. Yeah, they all have budgets, but budgets are annual. Most of them are not 5-year. Most people don't think out 5 years into the future. If you did, it would make things work a lot better. And if you go down and you take a look at that plant, it runs perfectly. Will there ever be another one? No. Why? Dioxin comes out of that stack, you know. Nobody wants dioxin in their community. Go ahead, John.
I just wanted to ask you a question, getting back to our charter.
Yeah.
The county attorney works for the legislature, am I correct? and the legislature hires a county manager as it stands now.
Yep.
Over the last many years, few years, it seems like the county legislature has given up a lot of its power of the intent of why they were elected with all these amendments and codes and everything else.
You're
in
saying through all
charge.
these resolutions that were
Right,
enacted.
right, that were enacted after the resolutions.
I
Do you-
would suggest they did just the reverse.
Well, that's what I'm asking you.
suggest they did
Because
both.
I hear criticism from others saying that
I would suggest
the
this
legislature gave up its power.
I don't think this legislature, do you agree with me, Alan? I think this legislature has arrogated to itself more powers.
I'm not sure I agree with that.
Yeah.
It's,
We've tried to.
Okay.
we've tried.
I'll agree with Gene.
Well, that's what Alan's saying.
I would agree with Gene.
There
Yeah.
were a series of amendments to the charter that were adopted in 2008, and
And then the Vanslau amendments in 2007.
right, and in 2008, I think I was the only legislator that voted against them, and my interpretation of those amendments were that it was taking power away from the legislature, and that's one of the reasons I voted against that. And I think the problem with when something like that occurs is not clear division of responsibilities, and I think that's something in this charter review really needs to be thoroughly.
Now come back to the charter.
And it's more of a question or answer of responsibilities as opposed to power. Power is a very bad word in my
It
opinion.
is. It's a very bad word.
It's a division of responsibilities, who's responsible for what, and I think that's the way it should be looked at. Because in the long run, we're all responsible to the citizens of the county. And that's the end goal, is to be responsible to them and do the right thing by them.
Gene and Alan, I'm sorry, Sam, just.
Yeah.
Which specific amendments are you referring to?
I was just gonna ask the same question,
He was,
Alan.
you were
The
probably
ones
referring to
that
the
I'm referring
ones,
to were adopted in October of 2008.
is that,
Was it 8 or 7?
Where on the
Vanslau
job?
ones, I think.
is that the supermajority for getting rid of the county manager, or?
It included that, and it
That was one of
also,
them. What was the other?
actually, there were many lines within that added the words, something to the effect of, with the authorization of the county manager.
Yeah.
So
Right.
there was a number of those things inserted.
So this is that one resolution where, within that resolution, the legislative body was sort of giving up some of its
In my opinion.
Responsibilities.
I hate to use the word power, responsibilities to the county manager, who is now still under the purview of the legislature.
But however, there is this supermajority. There's-
Not any longer.
No, I know, that was changed.
Yeah.
There is the supermajority that you had
Yes.
back then, that,
Yeah,
that
we changed
when there was a
that.
lawsuit,
We changed
a lawsuit last year that was brought into court, and when it
That's right, that's
happened
one
when
of the things we
Vanslau
brought
was,
back
Yeah.
there's a
Yes.
lot of other things, though there are items that they're pointing out that have been changed. And Randy Parker, for example, there was the
Well, I
question.
don't wanna get into
No,
specifics,
I'm
I
just
just wanna
saying, but
be very
there was a
general
question
in-
right now of with the charter
Right.
and the way the amendments came in, whose responsibility is it for the
Well-
commissioners and everything?
Okay.
Hold on,
Who-
Sam,
who-
one second, Alan just wants to add something.
Go ahead, Alan.
On the issue of, whether there needed to be a supermajority to remove the county manager, Gene and I were on the same side
Yes, we
of
were.
the issue.
Yes, you were.
And from my perspective, the reason we had to bring that back to the original provision in the charter was you had a circumstance where we felt you had a county manager who was only reporting to 4 legislators. And as long as there wasn't a 5th legislator, that's all they needed. They could run the government in accordance with 4 legislators, which is a minority of the legislative body. And it's the legislature that sets the policy,
Exactly.
not
Now,
an appointed person.
Alan just used a very important word, policy.
Right.
Does the legislature establish policy, or does the legislature run the government?
The legislature establishes policy and has their managers run the government for them. If we do not
Yeah.
like the way they are carrying out our policy, then we step in.
I would agree
It's
with Gene.
administrative functions.
I would agree with Gene, but there's a lot of debate about that on this
Exactly.
board.
Yeah, right.
There's a lot of debate about that on this board.
How did they change, I'm sorry, how did they change the
The amendment-
chart
Through the 9 legislators.
without doing it by law, though?
It's by law, they're
It is,
allowed
it's
to
in
change
by
local
amendments.
law.
No, by not going to a vote on it.
They
There's
did.
only, there's
referendum.
only
No,
certain
in
things that
2008.
you have to do through referendum.
No,
They erred in
certain local
2008.
laws have to be subject to referendum.
What happened in 2008? I don't think we were clear on that.
Certain local
Is it
laws
there?
do not have to be subject to.
There was an
referendum.
error in the way that the resolution or the local law
It was
was
adopted in 2008, but the time had expired.
And they had to.
Oh, when you found out?
Yes.
That's right.
Okay, all right, that makes more sense.
So
And that's
we
why
tried
when we
to-
amended it.
We tried to
Yeah.
amend it to bring it back to the original intention of
Okay.
the original charter.
And there's
Oh.
Because, yeah,
mandate-
you just can't,
No, you can't just say,
No,
aha.
yeah.
There's also,
We had to
there's
have it,
also
there's a-
mandatory referendums
Right.
and permissive
Right.
referendums.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, and
That's
they
right.
do things by permissive referendum. Some things are required, some things are by
Correct.
permissive, some things they can do.
I'm gonna go out of order here with
You're the
permission
chair,
of
you're not
the
out of order.
council, with the commission. We do have a member of the public that would like to ask a question.
Oh,
I would just like to share a few things with you. 25 years ago, I was the chairman of the Optional Forms of Government on the old Board of Supervisors. That was the know-nothing committee that the minority group, they threw you a bone, right? So lo and behold, with the whole world upset as they are now in Sullivan County, we took on this task of the original charter. And I went out and beat the drums for it. I thought it was the best thing that could happen to us in this county to take away the unfairness of the big towns. Any 3 of the big towns at the time could run this county. All they had to do was get together, and that's why for so many years, the big hotel tourism stuff was run the way, that's how the county was run. They got their people together and beat on the supervisors, and 3 of them came in here, and that's how things were done.
Yep.
So, we met for God knows how many months to try to come up with a solution. And we talked about numbers on the Board of Legislature, we talked about elected or appointed county managers, talked about all these different things. We also put in that original charter the divisions of how the government would be, planning, and I haven't, just a couple days ago, I was invited to come here and speak and share some thoughts, and I didn't get back into my stack of papers. In fact, every year I kind of think, I don't need slips, so I get rid of a few and I might want to research that again. But in any event, here's what our original thought was at the time. We thought 9 was a good number in that we felt we could divide the county up to a point where we wouldn't really leave any area kind of like in their own little no man's land, where they wouldn't be able to elect someone from their common area. And I will tell you, from what I've seen and the whole thing, I truly believe 9 might be a whisker too many, because we tend to create these little groups that can't seem to kind of hop over the fence once in a while, regardless of party. It's a personality issue. And it isn't the old Board of Supervisors that was wrong. The system works. It was the people we had there.
you got it.
And what I see here with the legislators, and I'm not picking on any of them, I'm just saying as a general term, that we get a little group of 3 or 4 that are so adamant with one thing, they're just not gonna give in to the other thing. And I think to myself, well, there's a couple ways that could be cured. One is to stagger the terms that was brought up earlier, which I think is a super idea. And I think the fair way is to draw the numbers out of a hat, or whatever you gotta do. I think that's probably the fairest way, and that's life. The other thing is to consider maybe we could operate with 5 or with 7 and make the districts bigger population. The only problem I see with that is if the pie, if you will, because you have to do it with population and then they kind of wiggle off different election districts. In reality, if that pie came to a point, you could have 3 people from the town of Thompson or 4 from the town of Thompson, and they really would start controlling the county. So I think 9 is a good number. And I think the cure of this little personality conflict is to stagger them. And politically speaking, who cares? This is Sullivan County. You're not talking millions of people, you're talking 70,000 people. The other thing is that we truly spent a lot of time on is, who do we have at the helm? And we felt that the county manager working at the pleasure of the board, not with a contract. And the argument is, well, we won't get anybody good. Well, guess what? I truly believe for what we're paying someone, if there's someone that has the qualifications and they're credible, they're gonna come in here and do the job, or they're gonna get canned. And it just, we truly felt that that was the best way to go. Now, I haven't pulled out the old charter that we originally started with, and then I was on that first charter revision. I think it was like 3 years later. Paul, was it like 3 years, we had the
We
review,
had a quick
our
one and
first
then 10
review
years
committee.
after that.
But we kind of felt that you go out and hire someone with some business acuity, with the business education. We felt that would be the best for the county. We feel that an elected official in this county, hey, if you're popular enough, you can get elected here. Go out and work hard, get the voters out, you'll get elected. You may not have a clue. And the next thing you're gonna do is start hiring somebody to do your job and building more government. We need less government. And so that's that point on the county managers.
Wouldn't
part
you
of it.
think that if you wanted to attract a really qualified person without a contract, that you'd have to offer a higher pay package? So that person that, they wouldn't have the security of a contract, but they would take the job because it offers more?
I don't know.
Is there some kind of
I don't
balance?
know that that's.
I also noticed that neither one of you gentlemen mentioned a thing called term limits.
We haven't gotten there yet.
We haven't gotten there
The
yet,
argument
but I
there-
did mention
the
it at the
argument
last
over term
meeting.
limits- The argument over term limits, you know, it's the same thing that, I truly believe that. I truly think there should be term limits, because we get people that have such war chests that you can't possibly run against them and win an election. It can't happen. And you find that is like the guys in Albany. Shelley Silver, I mean, just to throw a name out there, you
Don't
get
say
so
any dirty
well
words.
entrenched, you get so well entrenched that, you're almost invincible. And you've got millions and millions of dollars behind you, so that somebody coming out fresh that says, geez, you know, I think I'd like to try that on,
Never happened.
they don't have a fighting chance. I truly believe that that's a good thing to address or to look at.
I just have a question, being that you, one second, you were on the Board of Supervisors when this whole thing started, you, Andy, and others that back then, and I still can't understand, why was it that all the legislators that were elected started at ground zero for
15
this?
of us.
For the same, like, there wasn't staggered term limits?
No,
back-
no, there were 2-year terms, except, I think they were all 2-year at that time, and then they went to 4-year in Liberty, I think.
Liberty and-
Was it?
No, but you're talking about supervisors or legislators?
The legislators.
There's none.
Well, because.
You had no legislation.
They started at the same
I think that we
time.
had to start, now why, I don't know that we had a mechanism or even thought about a mechanism whereby, we would start with a staggered term. I mean, we didn't, I don't know that we had a way to approach it. Now
So
we have a
everybody
way
that
to
got
approach it.
elected had a 4-year term or a 2-year term in the
Four-
beginning?
4 years.
4 years, so at that point, I think it would have been easier if it was just,
It would have been, but
They
there was a
didn't.
reason we didn't do it specifically.
and what was the reason? I still
The
can't wrap
reason
my head around it.
was, one of the major reasons we didn't was because you were gonna go into an entirely new government with brand-new people, and as Jerry Benjamin pointed out the other day, they needed time to understand how the government worked and how
Yeah.
the system worked, and we felt by giving them a 4-year term to start, they would have the time to do that. Also secondarily, that generally speaking, incumbents get reelected. We were not concerned that you were gonna turn them all over, and the original Charter Commission was correct, that has never happened. So the idea was,
Came close.
use the 4, came close once, use the 4
My mistake.
years, because that would give these 9 people the ability to learn the government
How do
and
you
how to really
learn
run it.
government? How do you learn how to govern from where?
Well-
If you're starting from ground zero, where was it that they would acquire this knowledge?
Well, some of them were all board
Prior,
supervisors.
yeah,
Yeah, they were
prior
all-
to
Several
elected.
supervisors got
But
elected, Rodney.
with this last election, almost everybody on the legislative body has never been elected before, or am I wrong?
You're
Well,
right.
I wasn't I was an elected union official for over 30 years.
But not in government.
But I worked in government. I worked for the town of Fallsburg. I still work for the town of Fallsburg. So I understood how government worked from kind of both sides, because I started out as a clerk. I did billing, garbage, water, and sewer. And then I went out on the road. I saw how DPW worked. I worked on the roads. I've worked in water and sewer. So
like
I
some
understood.
experience.
So I understood how government worked, and I understood the finances of government.
Paul?
Two things to add on to what Elton said. By 9 districts, number one, we addressed more the one man, one vote, so that you did not have just a couple of the legislators that would go back to the old system similar to the Board of Supervisors, exactly like he said. And secondarily, with 9, with the population of the county, that gave a constituency which we felt was manageable. Remember? That was one of the reasons we
One
did.
of the words you hear all the
It's
time.
nice. It's a good match.
One of the
Sam.
words you hear all the time, and I would suggest has no business in a discussion about government, is that people would come with a business background. Because government is not a business. Government is very different than a business.
Depending upon who you talk to and who you ask.
Exactly.
But I agree with you. You cannot run it like a private
If you
business.
think
Because there's
about it,
different rules and regulations for a
When the
government.
recession hits, the average business person will cut costs, cut inventory, cut employees. When the recession hits, the average government now has to provide more service than it was providing before. And it has to do it with less revenue.
Less resources, exactly.
And I don't think most people understand that. It's not business. It's very different than business. Very different.
Well, to kind of change the subject just a little bit, to go back to what Najee had asked, how do you learn government? If you are interested in running for office, you should do your own research.
I agree with you.
And that's the
And I went
bottom
through many,
line.
many seminars
Right.
to educate myself and bring myself up to par in speed. However, in my opinion,
Mhm.
I don't see that happening with many others on this body.
And I, not to speak
So-
ill of any of my colleagues, I tend to agree with that.
See, I'm not pointing fingers, I'm sorry.
Neither
Bill.
am I.
I think that if someone wants to run for political office, they have to have a desire to run a government, to lead a government, get involved in issues, and, you know, there's an issue that someone wants to get motivated to run. I don't think you have to sit there and go to school. I have a political science degree, so I could say that I went to school, learned political science, no journalism, no sociology and psychology and all
But
that.
that's
So
not
you have
really
a
what I'm
degree.
saying. I
But
think you have to-
I think when you run for office, you do it because you want to change government or to get involved
Correct,
in
and that's
government.
why I
to
ran
make-
in that-
To make government work better and be better. That's why we're sitting here now.
However, you really have to work within the parameters
Of course,
of government.
right, of the
Exactly.
restrictions of a charter.
And not go outside those parameters.
Correct.
And I'm not gonna
Correct.
cast any other.
Having said that, what should the parameters be? That's what you're all here for.
Mhm.
Well, that's true, because I look at it this way: if you have a person running for a particular job, politician, maybe not a politician, and that person gets elected, now he or she is in there for a year or two. If she or he finds out they can't do the job, the legislature is stuck with them.
Right.
That's not the way it should be.
Unless they do the
can't
right
remove
thing and
someone.
say,
Well,
I can't do this, I'm resigning.
I have Paul, Elton, and then Bruce, go ahead.
To answer your question specifically,
Mhm.
the county government existed when the legislature came in on January 1st. So the commissioners, department heads, and the mechanism that ran it worked with the newly elected legislators, especially in committee forums, et cetera, where they were responsible to kind of give them a crash course of what this is really all about. That
That's
NISAC
serious
training,
business.
going out on their own, it was a learning curve, a steep one for them in order to really begin to understand how all of this worked. But we used the mechanism that was here, right, in order to train these new people and help them.
You have-
I will say this, I haven't really looked at the current charter, but I know just on what I've heard. Originally, that was supposed to be the people's document. There weren't supposed to be any changes done until it went up for vote. That was the people's document of this county. In fact, the original charter had the salaries of the legislators in there. So that,
Yeah, because
the original one had the salaries
It's
in there posted.
Yeah.
And the thing is then all of a sudden, the legislature gets in here and whoever led them where they were going, decided, well, we're gonna amend it, we're gonna amend it. We have more amendments to that original charter than the charter itself. And
Well, that's what Sam was saying earlier.
it's the old story is, there's some things that maybe aren't broken that have just been done for a certain reason. Because, it's, hey, it works for us, let's make this thing happen.
That's a good point. I mean,
We-
maybe this
we were-
commission.
We were deep and very thorough.
Yeah.
I mean, we had a lot of people come in here and explain to us different charters, and I read over, God knows how many, different
Yeah.
municipalities that we read over their documents, and we really were thorough in thinking on it. And we didn't just decide, oh, this doesn't sound good, we're gonna amend it. You know what I mean? It isn't that old a document, 25 years, I think it is, or thereabouts.
With many
It should-
amendments.
Yeah, and it's like, we didn't screw it up that bad to begin with, that it required
Well,
that.
I think you're making a very valid point now, and I agree with you, that maybe this commission should look back at that original charter and
tweak
it
it
and
and
make
start
it
there
smaller,
at
make
square
it
one, and
smaller
then
for what
maybe
it is
make.
now.
Bruce?
Well, I'm gonna change what I wanted to ask Stan a question, but I want to ask Ellen a question now, because I think you were around at the time. The last charter commission made recommendations, including one for a county executive. And as I understand it, the legislature ignored the recommendation. So on behalf of all of us who were prepared to devote many, many evenings to working on this issue, what can we expect from the legislature?
Well, that's it.
Ask us
From my-
after the election.
Depends after November, yeah.
First
No,
I have
I'm
to-
assuming you guys are around, yeah.
if I'm still here and have that opportunity to continue to serve, my expectation, I would be taking the considerations of the Charter Review Commission into consideration and giving it careful thought. I think the last Charter Review Commission, I believe, finished in, I want to say 2007. I was elected in the fall of 2007, came in 2008, and in October, there was only selective revisions that were made, some of which didn't actually come through the Charter Review Commission. That's the batch of amendments that I voted against. But, and I know there was a lot of pressure to get some of those revisions on the executive committee agenda, and for whatever reason, the then chairman just never seemed to get on executive committee. So, I value your time, everyone that's around this table, and, I am only one person, but.
I don't mean to interrupt you, and I know you're gonna be the next to speak, but as a supervisor, if someone wants to bring a resolution to a meeting, I can't kibosh it. I mean, I'm not understanding where this is coming from, because that resolution can come to all of the board members, and it's up to the board members to either say yay or nay, but it comes to the board. So how is it that any chair would just absolutely be the gatekeeper of resolutions?
At the end of the day, we're gonna have to decide how to handle our recommendations.
Right.
At the end of the day, we're gonna decide, if they're gonna kill all our recommendations, we might have to go to the public.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Well, I will go to the public.
I will
That's
too.
just the way I.
But while you're here,
and I would urge you to do
Sam
that.
lives in this building, but you don't anymore. United States Congress, 2-year term, they get elected, and the next day, they're running again. Right? I believe the Senate 6-year term is probably a little long, and the congressional term is mighty short. What do you think the term should be? And then my next question is gonna be term limits.
Yeah, I believe if you come up with staggered terms, I think there's nothing wrong with a 4-year term. And I would say that if you have 2 consecutive years, you get out for 4, and if you wanna run again and you get elected, good for you, for 2 more years, and then you're done. The reason we get stagnant, and I think that there's good, fresh minds out there and good, fresh ideas, and if you don't get a chance to really harvest that,
Yep.
it's,
It's over.
you're like we are right now in this county. You know, they say Chicken Little, the sky's falling. We're in a fog in this county. We gotta get this squared around pretty damn quick, or guess what? We're gonna have more problems than sitting around talking about a charter.
Do you worry about the legislators being too influential with the departments?
That shouldn't be happening.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you why. If you have a chairman of a committee that's kind of really close and they're going to bat all the time for these committees, then they come up here and they have a committee meeting, they should be selling it to their committee before it gets out here on the floor. I don't know, when we were there, I don't know that we really had that. I think that we kind of counted on each other, someone was Department of DPW or something like that, we kind of counted on their in-depth knowledge to make our decision. Like, I can tell you with DPW, there's a lot of things with landfill, I kept saying, no, 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 you know, that was me, that was my position I took with it. I don't know what's going on now, I really don't get into looking at who's doing what, it's there, it's being done. I didn't sense that when I was here, that, the one person that was the chairman of the committee was really kind of gonna make this happen for a department head, for his department. He would probably be who we would rely on if we had, serious questions about, gee, you wanna bond this, how bad is it, do we really need it, this and that and the other thing, and you'd expect him to be truthful, and we counted on that more than, I wouldn't think they were trying to pull something over, if that's what,
Ken, you had a question?
It's not a question. One of the things I hear is that some people think that doing something with a charter would improve the quality of person that we get elected to office. And I think where the system has fallen down is that people get experience in their community, be it through a fire district, through a fire company, through some not-for-profit organization they belong to, how to govern, and they move up into the town, or they get this experience someplace. And it's out there. What we have seen happen lately is being a politician, instead of being here for governance, has become a bad name. So when you look for candidates, you don't have candidates who want to step up, who are qualified to step up because they don't want to take the public abuse or whatever it is. And then we wind up digging and finding somebody to fill a slot, and we wind up with people who come up with agendas or don't have good perspective on stuff, and just don't have that governance philosophy in them. And a charter is not going to correct that. The only way we're going to correct that is if we can get people, get our governance working, in which goes back to the two major parties and the committee systems and finding decent candidates and really trying to get people back into looking at governing and being part of that governance is part of your community and making it better.
Yeah.
I just want to add that one of the problems that we have is that the legislature meets on Thursdays, Tuesdays, they have the committee meetings during the days. The people who often run for the legislature are people that can afford their jobs to take off certain periods of time away from their job, or they're retired, or they're wealthy. So you're not attracting a pool of people. We had this discussion last night in Liberty, and we had a discussion of someone that would be an ideal candidate, besides another person who would be an ideal candidate as well, and I don't want to mention that one's name, and they'd be sitting in this room, but in any regard, we had a candidate that came before us that would be perfect. The problem is the person has to make a living. It's a young person who is energetic, who has a family here and wants to grow Sullivan County. Now this person is prohibited from running for office because it's not a full-time job, and it's a job where you have to leave your other job to come to this job on certain days of the week.
But that's a procedural thing, because the legislators at this point chose, and if I don't want to speak out of turn, to meet in the daytime. Personally, I think they should meet when people could come to a meeting.
Now, they did that. They ran,
Some of
the
us wanted
entire
to do
slate
that.
that ran,
4 o'clock is not good
nine
for me.
legislators that ran on a slate last time, 7 legislators, ran on a slate that they wanted night meetings. And suddenly, they had one night meeting, and there were no longer night meetings because people were arguing that you have to hire someone downstairs, you have to have the office open, the building open, and it couldn't be done. And maybe that's
For someone
something.
who used to do scheduling with many people, there's creative ways of scheduling.
Ask the county attorney right here. You know what I'm talking about,
I will give you a
Sam.
perfect example of creative scheduling. When I decided to run for office, I went to my boss and I said, this is what I want to do. The meetings are on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Can I change my days off to Tuesday and Thursday if I get elected? I will work Wednesday, I will work Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday to do my 40 hours. And they said, if you get elected, we're fine with that.
It's creative
So
scheduling.
those are my days off now, and I spend my Tuesdays
Maybe
and
they should
Thursdays
meet
here.
on the holiday and on the weekend.
Right, well, I just have a question before, I don't mean to cut you off, Bruce, I have one question. Sam, Alan, and Jean,
Yeah,
in the charter, under, powers and duties of the legislature,
What page are you on?
I'm on page 7 of 16, letter O. Shall create and appoint a council of government that shall serve in an advisory capacity to the county legislature. The council of government should include representatives of the legislature, town supervisors, village mayors, board of education, county manager, county treasurer, and other appropriate officials. Added October 18th, 2007 by local law number 12, 2007. What happened? Where is this? Is this occurring?
not that I know of.
It's in the charter. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I
Anybody?
didn't, no, we were trying to, I was trying to hear you, I don't have the charter in front of me.
It should
Oh, go
happen.
right ahead.
The committee was supposed to be set up to meet with the
Letter O.
legislature made up of towns and some other people.
Oh, okay, yeah, I know
And they're
that.
supposed to have this interaction, and I guess
Right,
it-
right.
from what I heard, it fell by the wayside because people lost interest.
Correct, yeah.
The people that were appointed lost interest? So, did anybody kind of focus on this? That this would be a line of communication? Because I, as a supervisor,
Right.
feel, and I've said this before, we're here, here's the county,
Mhm.
and there's nothing in between, the void. Like, you're operating in your own sphere, we're doing our own thing, and there's nothing connecting us. A lot of times, and at our meetings, we feel, like the stepchild, like the orphan stuff, you know, we're abandoned.
Let me ask you a question, that might be something that I will tell you has happened when you hear, oh, we haven't seen our legislator at our town board meeting.
Ditto.
That wasn't the intent when we originally talked about this. And maybe it's time to ask the voters if they wanna go back to a board of supervisors.
We've done that on the supervisor's level, and that kind of like,
And the thing is that, you're talking about making a living, and we were getting two salaries, one from the county, one from the town. You know, it wasn't a lot of money, but it was enough that it bought groceries.
Yeah, but the two salaries, when they diminished to one,
I went back
did
into
it
town.
raise to equal the two?
No, I went back to my town. I stayed at the town for another 4 years, I think it was, as town supervisor, and got away from it. But, I don't remember I don't even remember what the salaries were, that was that long ago. But between the two, it was a nice monthly income. And, as I say, the reason that we really brought this all about was the fact that the three big towns were doing anything they wanted. Or if not, it was like Danny Lamberti was the 13 weighted votes and moved everything the way he wanted it.
Well, but that's why I look at that map and I say, maybe there should be 18, so each legislator has less, that bad word.
18,
That's-
18 what?
18 districts.
18 districts. Just
I think that's
throwing up
in
a
the
scenario.
same-
Some people say we
Well,
should
number
have
one,
less.
it's too much. Well,
and
number
I'm
one,
just
it's an
throwing
even
up a
number. You don't want to
picture
We only have 15
of having
supervisors.
18, so there's less people in each district, but each of those
Oh, I could just
18
picture
has
18.
less clout.
Well, here's what we
Getting
had
18
discussion
good
on
candidates.
too. We had discussion on whether we had our supervisors with their weighted votes coming in and being an influence. In other words, we were looking at kind of running the two together at one time, where we had, okay, so you've got your weighted votes, and if there's a big issue that comes up, let's hear what the supervisors have to say. and here's the legislators. We looked at, you're talking about having more numbers and more voices and more thoughts and more opinions. Then we thought, no, this isn't gonna work.
No, I'm talking about how to not make a clique of the three big towns running things.
You
Well, I
can't,
don't think
because
they
it comes
are
down
now.
to one vote, one person,
not
and if you
actually
bring
works.
anything down to that level, you're
But
gonna
even,
lose it.
even in
Right.
one town, let's say I'm from the town of Fallsburg.
You can't, no.
Instead of, 1.5 legislators representing that district, maybe there was 4. You know, no matter where they live, those 4 are not gonna agree on the same issues. So it couldn't be.
Well, it gets into a financial deal, because you're starting to pay more and more
That's
people.
true, that's the
Ken.
downside.
Ken, Bruce, and then,
Gene, it's personalities now.
well,
It's a
Ken, go ahead.
combination of things.
That's
History lesson first. Before Elton and his history lesson and weighted voting, it was controlled basically by one party most of the time. It was Republicans and Democrats, 15 towns, and it was not too often that the Democrats had a majority. The Democrats were Fallsburg, Liberty, Thompson, and Mamakating. Sometimes we never think we could get in there, or some other one. Most of the time, it was always the Republicans that were in charge. So most of the discussion always drifted towards the western end of the county, and decision-making went towards the western end of the county. Then we had the one man, one
What was
vote,
this?
and it shifted to the big towns because that's where they had the most votes. So, you know, first we had one problem, and then we corrected that problem with one man, one vote, and then the power shifted to a very select townships. And then, then we come up with this here situation.
Bruce.
Oh, a couple things.
When was
One,
the second floor?
I guess we sort of thrown the agenda away because I see Gene is listed, presumably.
But that's
Ellen would
okay,
have
it's
time.
good discussion.
Yeah, see, it is good discussion,
Yeah.
and I just also note that it's 7:30 and we haven't talked about stop times, but I think in the future we should know when the meeting ends too, so people can make their plans.
If you want, I'll come back to the next
No,
meeting as well.
no, but I just wanted, since Sam's had really a chance to share a lot of information with us, and you've served, Sam, the same position in 2 towns. Am I wrong in thinking you think it's much more effective to have, 2 counties, much more effective to have a executive? That you felt that there was strategic planning that could not go on this level? You're taking a
you are
fifth?
wrong.
Okay.
It's not often I get to say that.
Just be concise.
It's
I'd
not
rather hear about the
structure,
incinerator. Yeah.
it's not structure, it's people.
Right, that's right.
I don't care how you organize a structure. Right structure, wrong people, doesn't work. Wrong structure, right people, it'll work.
But we can't change the people, we can only
Well,
change the structure.
let me give you the example. I know Gene said be concise, and I'll try to be.
I'm not on the commission, you don't have to listen to me.
I always have to listen to you, Gene. I served under 2 different county executives. I said one who really enjoyed running the government.
Yeah.
The second really didn't. He enjoyed campaigning and the other things, and may he rest in peace, he's gone now. It was Andy O'Rourke. He was a totally different type of county executive. And when you got that different type of county executive in, the government became different. I'm going to give you a contrast. First one kept commissioners, politicians, commissioners and politicians totally apart. Politicians were not allowed to communicate with commissioners. He just didn't allow it. You got major issues, you showed up at his house, usually at 10 o'clock at night. I knew where I sat on the hearth at the fireplace, you know.
They don't have legislators.
And the political leaders were not allowed to communicate directly with the department heads or the commissioners. Great way to run a government, if you think about it. Most people wouldn't think about doing it that way, but it really was. Andy was a politically run government. So politicians ran that government. And it was a totally different government because of that.
Well, you know, you bring up a good point, but if you're a legislator, in my opinion, I'm an elected official, I'm not a politician. I'm a politician once every 4 years when I need to get a line on a ballot. Once the election is over, I serve everybody regardless of party.
Gene, I know you think that way, but not all of your colleagues do.
Which goes back to your other
Sam,
point.
Sam,
The system would work if they had the
Sam,
right people.
Sam, this commission is not gonna find
Not all of
another
Gene's
George
colleagues
Washington,
do.
Oh, yes, they
another
are.
Abraham Lincoln.
Right here.
And some of Gene's colleagues
Go ahead.
will say, some of Gene's colleagues, and I've heard him say, will say, they're here to run the government. Now, personally, that's not my view. Personally, my view is that when you have a legislative form of government, the legislature should be setting policy, and you have a professional staff. And this county happens to have a superb professional staff.
2 out of the 9 here agree with you.
If you go out into those corridors and you look at the county auditor,
Minority of 4. Majority of 2.
if you look at the county auditor, the budget director, the public works commissioner, I leave myself out, obviously, but people like that. You've got some really, really, really good professional people. If you have an elected legislator whose view is that they run the government, and I'm getting close to the edge of
They'll run it into the ground is what you're trying to say. And you're right,
I'm
because
getting-
that's not how you run a government. You make the policy and let the government run itself.
Your job is to
I'm
run
getting
an
close,
assignment.
Gene, I'm getting close to putting my foot in his mouth is right.
Well, I'm trying to help you.
But if you.
For a change.
if
I
you-
want names.
If you get people who don't understand the
Supply
government,
the bullets.
if you get people who don't understand the government thinking they're running the government, you've got a problem. We've got a county auditor whose office is next to mine, who could be an auditor in a Fortune 50 company. I think you would agree. She's that
Yeah.
good. Angela Shedon, she's superb. Somebody shouldn't be looking over her shoulder and micromanaging that county auditor. We've got a Public Works Commissioner who really knows his stuff. He's a qualified engineer, he knows what he's doing. Somebody shouldn't be looking over his shoulder and micromanaging. And what I have said, and this doesn't sit well when I say it, but I will say it. Alan and Jean are not there because of competence or ability or qualifications. They're there because they induced more people to vote for them than voted for their opponent. That's the fact. And that's the fact from the President of the United States all the way on
Steve,
down
you're right,
when you
he's getting
come.
close.
I'm out of office Monday. That's the.
You must
Tomorrow,
have a good
Thursday.
retirement benefit because you're purposely putting your foot in your mouth.
I know.
Gene's getting the boxes.
That's the fact with every elected official.
That's what I alluded to before, Sam, that I was afraid that some of the legislators start to think that they run the departments.
They do.
Well,
I'll be
it gets
blunt
back to
about
what
it.
Elton was saying as well.
Alan, am I
You know?
correct?
Well,
Absolutely.
I'll
You're
give my
absolutely right.
unique observation, being that I served as a planning commissioner for 6.5 years, at the pleasure of, and I wouldn't say that there should be absolutely no communication from legislators, because I would have people like Rodney or Chris Cunningham or Bob Kunis, whoever, they would come in periodically and ask for something, but they weren't there micromanaging, so I had a great deal of latitude. And I chair the planning and real property committee, but I don't micromanage the staff. I'm not down in Nancy's office every day asking her, a bunch of questions. And I don't even do that with the planning commissioner, and I have, probably 10 years more experience. So I certainly could run the division. I did for 7 years, but I don't. I'm very hands-off. So I see my role as working with my colleagues to set the policy, and then it's up to the department head to carry out that vision. If they don't,
Absolutely.
if they don't carry out what we've asked them to do, then I'll get together
That's
with
when,
Gene.
and that's when you get a
But
little
you still
involved.
have to ask
And
questions.
Alan's left out one person.
Okay.
One person?
Yeah, the county
County
manager.
Manager, yeah, that's what I was.
The county manager. Because if you're gonna have this form of government, the department heads should not report to the legislators. They should keep them informed, they should communicate with them.
Well, and
But
that's the key.
But the
It's not that you're
person,
reporting to me. If I have a question, I should be able to ask you the
Absolutely.
answer to that
Right.
question, but not at a public meeting and make us all look like idiots.
but the department heads should be reporting to the county manager.
But
And we've had some situations, and I'm not gonna get into detail, where department heads have not been reporting to county manager.
Bill?
That's a problem.
Larry has a question, and then you go
Okay.
ahead, Larry.
You would agree, Gene?
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead.
I worked under 2 county managers, so.
I would just
I never
make
heard.
a comment. I mean, I've been in politics for a very long time, and I kind of tend to agree with what Alan's saying. I think there's, the one thing I would not want to do is create more of an insulation between the elected legislators and who they represent and the county government. I a little bit disagree with Mr. Yasker, and I'm just wondering if he works.
When
at
did I
will
get to
or-
be Mr.?
But I don't think the legislature should be prevented from meeting with a department head for discussion. I understand, I've run business for a long time, and you have to have managers, and they do their business, and they take the direction from the county manager or the executive. But don't tell me that I've got a constituent who has a concern about something in the department that I can't go and ask for an explanation or talk to them about.
Let me suggest,
You're
let me
right.
suggest.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Let me suggest something to you, because I don't disagree with you. But I would suggest that as long as you're gonna have a county manager, and a legislator wants to know, some of the legislators just happen to have a very good rapport with individual department heads. They've known those department heads for many, many years, and they can pick up the phone, they can go to them, without thinking about it. But as long as you're gonna have a county manager, I'm gonna suggest to you, if a legislator's got a question, the place to start really is the county manager. It makes more sense to run the government that way.
There's a
Otherwise-
difference between running the government and just going to a department head or a manager and asking them a question just for clarification
Yeah,
for you. And you're not directing that manager on how to run his department. You're
You
just
have to be able to
asking
do
a
that.
question.
I'm not disagreeing with Gene at all, but what we've got to some degree, and Gene and I,
We go at it every once in a while.
Bill, go ahead.
no, I don't think we disagree on this, but we're not gonna get detailed on it. If department heads think that their primary reporting place is an individual legislator rather than the county manager, then we've got a problem. Because then you don't have the county manager in the loop.
Well, the department head shouldn't think that way.
But I would also add, on the other extreme
Sorry.
of that, if you have department heads that feel that they have absolutely no obligation to the legislature, That's also a problem.
Yeah, that's a
So
problem
somewhere in
too.
between.
And that's,
Because we're the ones who are elected to represent.
Bill,
I-
and then you.
that is what I wanted to bring up. The people of Sullivan County elect people, and they make the determination of someone's qualifications and their ability to perform an office. So they made the determination that these two gentlemen at the time were the best qualified and were offering something to the voters. Then you're saying the voters of Sullivan County or the United States
Yeah.
government cannot make smart decisions.
Exactly.
That's fine. But the problem that we're discussing right here, and you're saying department heads, when someone is an elected official, they have a right to question or to talk to their management, unless you're electing a county executive. Now, if you're electing a county executive, that person is accountable to those department heads. So that's the difference in government that we have to discuss here.
It's just reverse.
Now, I mean reverse. So the government that you have now is people are saying that you have a chairman, whether you like the person or not, they're saying there's a lack of leadership. And by having the lack of leadership, that can frustrate some of the other legislators. And there's also a politically charged legislature, which we have right now, where it seems like a minority of 4 sometimes is running over the majority of 5.
Right, I have to step out of this part of the
Right,
discussion for obvious reasons.
But the fact is, when it came to the electing or hiring a county manager, or firing a county manager, or it came to other issues. We discussed before that at the end of the legislature session every December, any legislator could come and give resolutions that circumvent committees. Cora Edwards came to this legislature in December, gave 7 excellent resolutions that should have been discussed. They have been tabled, they have been stonewalled, and they are going absolutely nowhere, and they're thrown back into committees. Now, when you say that the legislature, why do they have committees and committee chairs? Because those are elected officials that have the chairs of the department heads that come before those committees to discuss everything. So we're talking double standards here. If you have a chairperson from public safety, and the sheriff comes there, the district attorney comes there, the head of probation comes there, and all of the departments that are in law enforcement comes before them. You have Dick Martinkovic as the commissioner of public safety that comes there. Then you have the health and family services. You had the commissioner, whoever is in that department, comes there. So you're supposed to have the input of 5 legislators and inviting all the legislators to come to those committee meetings, plus the county manager, plus everyone is there. So that's an opportunity. You're talking and asking questions. And so we can't have a government, which we have now, that's frustrating the public of the double standards.
Actually, the way the board's rules read, any legislator can put a resolution on before a full board meeting. You don't
And then
have
it's
to
shut
go-
down.
You don't have to go through
You were there, Sam.
What I'm saying
But
to
Sam, we
you
just
is-
had a case in point where Alan's saying that some resolutions never made it through because the chair was,
You-
did I understand it
Pull it
correctly?
from the agenda.
What I was saying to you is, let me finish. A legislator can insist that a resolution that they present be presented to the full board. It does not have to go in front of committee under the current rules of the board. That's a 3rd level, you have the charter, you have the code, and then you have the rules of the board.
Bruce and then Paul. Bruce.
Well, it just strikes me as a lot of what we're talking about here is that maybe a problem inherent in having a county manager who is not elected and is not, by design, really responsible to the people. If we had a county executive, everyone would understand the clear line of authority, and I think there's confusion here about how much power a county manager has. Who is running the show? Is he in charge? I know you say very nicely, well, he's supposed to supervise the departments and the legislature sets policy, but I don't think it's working that way in this county from what I
Well, look at Orange County. Look at the difference between the previous county executive and the current county executive. Totally different, correct?
Right, but you
might as well have had 2 totally different counties.
I agree, and we cannot sit here and decide who the people are gonna be to fill these positions.
Exactly.
And just a final thought on that, I think it's easier maybe to find 1 highly qualified person than 9 highly qualified people. And maybe if we have 1 executive, we're gonna get the best of the county rather than the best of 9 districts, and have them try and figure it out without real leadership, because
But
a
you're
legislature doesn't have real
not.
leadership.
Paul, you were gonna say
It doesn't
something?
matter
Sure.
who goes. When you go to an election and you're electing the supervisor, it's the 2 people that put their hands in the pot.
Correct.
Not who's really qualified.
Right.
You're not judging whether either one is the best qualified, you're judging
Exactly.
which one's more qualified than the other.
Sure.
You don't wanna put that as your executive to the county,
Right.
Like
because you
having the
could get
president
a
in that
bus driver,
Well, we
So-
can
you
get,
know,
we can get.
and they could
Well,
win.
Ralph
And they
Brandon
could do
was
a good
okay.
job.
Or they could not do a good
Yeah,
job.
that's it, that's
You know,
the-
but
That's
that's
that's the risk we take.
What do you say about that?
That's
I
democracy
just wanna
for
share
you.
one quick thing with that, and if you put up, if it were to go to referendum, or if the legislature makes that decision, or if you give it to the legislature and they try to come up with something, we spent a lot of time on that originally. And in our gut, we just didn't see that the good people that you would want to be here, they aren't gonna run.
They are.
Just like the
No,
good
it's
people
cynical.
you wanna get
It's
to
true.
run for legislator, they're not gonna run.
That's right.
And I will tell you that this county is so limited. I'd like to say some things, but I'm gonna just shut up right now. But I will tell you,
Turn out the lights and talk.
I will tell you that, we beat that up and beat that up and beat that up. And our best thought at the end of the day was, we're gonna hire a county manager to work at the pleasure of the board. And if they did their job, we gave them the marching orders, they did the marching, that would've worked.
That's right.
The problem is that you get into these personality conflicts with these legislators where they're just not gonna work together.
That's right.
And again, it goes back to it's not the system that we have here, it's the people. And that's,
I think
I
we've all
don't know that
determined
you're
that.
ever gonna cure that. The county manager, working at the pleasure of the board, is certainly gonna be sucking it up and doing the very best job he can for the majority of
That's right.
that board, or
Unless
he's
he's
going
not.
down a road.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, we've had some good people here that have tried to do the right thing, but the people on the outside are the ones that gave them the agita. It
Mhm.
wasn't the department heads, it wasn't the public, it was the handful sitting in the room. You can't.
And he's got 2 small kids.
He's hitting everything right on the head.
Well,
It's just, you don't think by changing what we have is gonna
Gonna
cure the
change
problem.
things.
We thought that, boy, what a mistake. It just
Let me
is
give you an
true.
I just wanna give Paul the floor.
One example before Paul, one example.
That's gonna take
Who
an
do
hour.
who do I serve at the pleasure of?
The legislature.
Nope,
Public.
County manager.
County manager.
nope.
People.
When I was,
The chairman, the
when
chairman.
when I worked for a county executive, I served at the pleasure of the county executive.
Right.
But
That's West
here, I can only be terminated by being brought up on charges
That's right.
and being given an opportunity to be heard. Well, that's a weird system if you think about it.
That's right.
Who negotiated that contract?
Does that make
He should be a
it?
county attorney.
And the contract ends when the legislature.
Gene, does that,
Enough people accuse me of being a politician.
All right, guys. Paul,
Gene, does that
Paul,
make any sense to
You have the
you?
floor now, Paul.
No, it doesn't.
Go ahead.
Doesn't make any sense
As
to
I
me.
sit
I'm
here
sorry.
and listen to you, you're all over the place with regards to philosophies of government. If you adhere to what you're talking about, having the legislators have the ability to be able to go and talk to the department heads and not go through the county manager first, you're advocating for a weaker form of county manager government. And that's exactly what you did when you took out the supermajority. Because by doing that, you weakened the county manager. So you put the county manager in a position where they don't have the ability to come in and disagree with the legislature as they should have the ability to, because now they're in a weaker position than they were before. Because if you alienate only the simple majority, they're out. So you have to decide which way you're going to go. If you want the legislature to keep its power and influence, then you weaken the county manager, which you did, and you sure as hell don't go to a county executive, because a county executive that's powerful won't put up with that stuff. It's executive. If you go to a county executive form of government, everything changes. You as a legislature are weakened, your influence is going to be diminished. Your agenda, you'll be lucky if you get, it's gonna be the execs. And if they're a powerful executive, and they know how to run a government, and they have the ability to manage, they're a good speaker, and they know how to use the bully pulpit of the position with the press, they are gonna run it. You as a legislature are not. I've seen it, because I worked at the state level for such a long period of
And they will
time.
keep
You
you
can't
from
go
the
both
legislature.
ways at the same time. If you want the legislature to be able to relate, then you're gonna diminish the others. If you go the other way, that is not gonna happen.
I think we had a really good discussion, Sam. I really do appreciate you coming out. It
He's
is
not
the
leaving.
witching
He's
hour.
not
It is 8 o'clock. Jean and Alan,
kidding.
thank you for
Thank you.
giving us your input. Do you want to add anything else?
No,
Do
I
any of the
mean-
members have any other questions?
If you ever want us to come back, just ask.
You
I'll-
back
I'll-
anytime.
Come back anytime and all the time. And Elton,
2
thank
hours
you
of
again for your insight as well. Yes, Paul?
That's
I,
fine too.
I was sitting because I wanted to
I
make
haven't
one other
seen you. I
point
know,
that
I
I
know.
thought was very, very important, and this charter commission needs to understand it. I think it will help their perspective as to what happened with the last one. You have to give credit to the Board of Supervisors, because they understood what they were doing with not only the bridges, but a host of other things, putting themselves first and not putting the county government first. To give them credit, they understood it, and they voted to change the system and eliminate themselves, diminish their power, and to create the county legislature form. When the last charter commission recommended the county executive form, and the legislature did not put that out for a referendum, the charter commission had a choice. It could have then gone out on its own and petitioned in order to go over the top of the legislature and have it go out to a referendum, which the people have the power to do that. And if that happened again, Bill, this commission could very well go right out and do that.
That's right.
So they determined not to put that form up. And now, maybe we're getting some insight as to why, because you went back and weakened the county manager. So you're looking philosophically, if that's where you really are, to keep the legislature more powerful.
That's not what they did.
Our-
I don't think, no,
Our
no, no,
intention
no, no,
wasn't
no.
to, our intention wasn't to weaken the county manager.
You
Our
brought it back to
intention-
its,
what-
the way you set it up
Yeah.
originally.
But
I
I'll
don't think
point
they
out,
weakened the county
Serve at the
manager.
pleasure.
while I don't work at the pleasure of the board, the county manager
think they did.
does.
Yeah.
Yeah. What?
He has a
That's what
contract,
we reinstated.
and that contract allows 5 members of the board to terminate him without cause. There's a certain amount of money has to be paid, but, so, he can be terminated on less ground than me.
Right.
Or than I can. My grammar was poor.
You know,
I
that simplifies
apologize.
it. That, you know, that's very, it's a bad simplification of why we did what we did. We wanted to go back to the original intent of the original charter. That was our only intent at that point.
I understand that, Gene.
And it's not that we wanted to fire anybody without any cause. We thought we had cause.
I know. I'm pointing
We
out
had
the
an
distinction between.
untenable situation where you had basically a county manager who's only concerned with 4 legislators.
Well,
So, you know, it's a
Well, it goes back
representative
to the
democracy, you can't have the
personality thing.
majority.
I-
like
Do
that.
we have a copy of the original chart?
That's what I was gonna ask, how do we get a copy of
I think-
Well,
these
that's
so
what
we
I'm
can
asking
compare?
Terry
Yes.
for. If we have the copy of the
So we can
original
compare.
charter, so that can get
Right.
emailed out to everybody,
Mhm.
and I would, yes, Alan. go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was gonna make a suggestion. It would have to be, we'd have to get a county staff member to assist, but it might be very useful to have the original county charter
And the new.
and then
And
a
the
track
new.
changes version that
I'll
shows
see
all
if
the
I have
changes
one
that were
kicking
made.
around. I've thrown a lot of
original
this
was
stuff
done on a
away
regular
because I thought,
typewriter. We didn't have computers back
Right.
then. But I might have it at home, or it might be
Yeah,
in there,
but-
and I know I put it on one of those,
But I
thumb
think
drive?
Elton made a
yes,
very
it was
good
a
point,
brother
that when the
typewriter.
charter
I
first
threw
came out,
You let your children worry about throwing.
It was rather short and sweet and to the point.
Right.
And that's why I think you guys should look at that original
Well,
charter.
that's what
and
I'm
maybe
requesting, that we look at the
condense it back.
original charter.
Less
Um,
rules, easier
yes.
to rule by.
We have the amendments that were made to it. So Alan, I don't know if you can look into it and help Terry get it, or if Terry has it, I don't know. Somewhere, if we can get the original
If
charter.
you look
I
at
would
most of
appreciate
those amendments, and I'm trying to stay away from personalities, but most of those amendments, Gene, correct me if I'm wrong, or Alan, correct me if I'm wrong, were personality driven by one person, those 2007 amendments.
Right.
To give the county manager more authority
Exactly.
in both the charter and in the code. And so there were a host of amendments back in 2007 that were written, frankly, by the county manager at the time.
Exactly.
So that will help clarify, I think,
Thank you
for you
for-
what was going on. And I'm speaking
Organization.
maybe out of turn, but
Without the blessing of somebody on the list.
Good.
Yeah.
I gotta stretch. Don't get old, it hurts.
go 400.
No, I won't.
You're supposed to get all that.
There's also a request here for an organizational chart, and
That's a very good idea.
if Terry,
It's in the budget.
I'm sorry, yes, it's in the budget. If we can get a copy of that, not everybody's gonna carry that big budget, but just a copy of the organizational chart. I do appreciate you coming here again, and Sam, you can come next time too?
Well, I apologize for this
That's okay.
stupid hand, which 6 weeks
I know what
ago
you're saying.
turned into this. It worked perfectly up to then, but.
We were more paying attention to your
My,
foot.
my foot was in my mouth.
Thank you for coming.
But my commitment to this commission was, and unless my medical situation gets worse, and some of you know what I'm talking about, I will be here for every meeting of the commission.
Well, you're certainly welcome, and
Good.
so's your insight.
Nice.
I just wanna say that JJ did email everybody, his, review and
We
research.
gotta go for
Yes.
2 hours of
There's, I
infusion
just wanna remind
tomorrow
everybody, the
morning.
next meeting is May 20th at 6 PM here.
Chemo,
JJ will be
in other words.
co-chairing that one. Bruce did bring up a good point, we need to have some kind of time limits here. If we're starting at 6, could we end by 8? But then again, I would hate to cap a good discussion.
Right.
So that's something for you guys to ponder for the next meeting. JJ did research budget that he is requesting, if we so choose to go with the Jerry Benjamin Group to help us out, a budget of $30,000 to $40,000. It's just an email. I'm not even entertaining discussing this here. The email came out today.
Right.
Read it, and then that's for discussion for the next meeting.
We also want to keep in mind the idea of rotating this location. I've mentioned that in the town, and people seem to think it's a good idea.
Should we finish
wanna
with
keep that in
the
mind.
county?
Let's finish with the county,
officials,
yeah.
though?
Orlando would be nice.
I agree.
First I hear of it, but I've gotta give you a reaction, which is, I'm gonna get in real trouble before the end of
Oh,
the night.
that's okay, Sam.
They have
Right,
all my-
Gene?
I'll buy you 2 shoe horns for your foot and your mouth.
Okay. To pay consultants to tell you what you're supposed to do never made sense to me.
I agree.
I second that.
So if you read the memo, you'll see that the
It's
3
not.
co-chairs felt that that was not appropriate at this point.
You then wind up being led by somebody who you're paying a lot of money to,
Right.
That's not
and who has to justify their existence.
Right.
You're right.
And I think the reason why this is a citizens commission and not an outside consultants commission is because the original charter creators wanted it that way. And they wanted it every 10 years to be a citizens commission.
Well,
And-
Again, Elton hit it right on the head.
Exactly, and
It was supposed to be the charter of the people.
And I, frankly, for whatever it's worth, you know what a consultant is? Somebody who comes from more than 100 miles
Right.
Thank
Gets
you
paid
for
for it.
your opinion. Thanks, Sam.
Feel well,
Yes,
Sam.
Paul, go ahead.
Feel good.
One other technical thing, and while Sam is still here, I'll say it so he can hear me. I called Sam the other day on some questions, specific questions with language
Oh, I
and other
have
things.
that
Yeah.
certificate of availability. Come into my office, I'll give it to you.
Okay, and what I want to point out is, for example, there's duplication of language on page 7 and 11 referring to various things. Let me just get to the bottom line very quickly. There's things in this charter that burden it, that don't belong in here. They belong in the rules, they belong in the code. And there are other things, as Sam can point out to you, with this availability certificate for funds. That's already been replaced, Nadia, by a process that the county has already put in. We need to do cleanup and take some of these
Could
things
you just-
right the hell out of
But I
here.
think we should do this
Repeat that,
later
Paul,
on.
because I
We
was-
will,
Yeah.
but I wanted to
I'll
say
give
it
you-
while
I'll
Sam
give
is
you-
here.
I'll give you a copy of it. In fact, I should have brought it in. I had it on my
That
desk.
should be later.
Nadia,
Oh, yeah.
what I would do, if I can, if it's okay with the commission, maybe we could ask Sam, there may be other things in here that you know that exactly are the same as this, that do not belong in here, belong either in the code or someplace else, that's burdening this. If you could let us know what they are, so we could take a look at them.
Okay,
Because
Our
it's
relationship
classic
with the
stuff.
village.
okay. So it's basically language, that's gotta be.
That's right, things that got stuck in
We
here in
don't have enough
2000,
time
there's
to
things
solve
that
And
got
next,
blocked.
and the next meeting, you guys will be discussing the code, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And that will be, with
20th.
JJ.
Administrative code?
20th.
The 20th. And
Administrative
is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in
I have
favor,
one.
unless somebody wants to stay here?
Good luck. Thanks.
Thanks.
Where did you get that?
Yeah.